Good afternoon. I'm Carmen Blair, the Deputy Director of the San Mateo County Historical Association, and I would like to welcome you to this afternoon's Courthouse Docket. The Courthouse Docket is a regular series of lectures and performances that is held here in historic Courtroom A and is sponsored by Cypress Lawn Heritage Foundation. Now, each month we like to explore a different theme, a different idea of local history. And today we're taking a look at some history from the city of San Mateo, specifically the Amelia Vollers house, which was a Queen Anne Victorian. We are pleased to have with us today Patricia McDaniel, a former owner of the home. When she and her spouse Brian purchased the house, no one knew exactly when it had been built. Searching for the answer led them to various local archives in an attempt to learn more about the early history of the house. Please welcome her as she shares with us some of what she's discovered.
Okay. Thank you, Carmen, for that introduction, and thank you everyone for coming. It's really an honor to have been asked to give this presentation. My spouse Brian and I bought the Amelia Vollers house in 2010. Back then it wasn't known as the Amelia Vollers house. It was simply a charming old house that was for sale when we were looking for a place to buy in downtown San Mateo. And the seller was a property developer, and he had purchased the house in 2004 with a plan to tear it down and replace it with condos. Oh no, I hear you all saying. Yes, that was his plan, and I don't know why he didn't check with the city before he bought the place, because as soon as they got wind of his plans, they said, no, you can't do that. That's a historic home. So instead, he did some basic repairs. The biggest thing he did was he replaced the foundation, but he also remodeled the kitchen, the bathroom. Those were at the back of the house, and those are the less historic parts of the house. He also added a small cottage and a 2-car garage to the large backyard. So the house, as you can sort of see from the exterior pictures, was in pretty good shape when we bought it. It didn't need a major renovation. It just needed some basic repair and restoration work. Something that the developer wasn't really that interested in. He didn't really care about the history, but we wanted to restore it to maybe what it used to look like back when it was first built. And we were first-time homeowners. We had never bought a house before. We were not especially handy, so I don't think we would have bought it if it had been in really bad shape. So when we bought the house, the listing indicated that no one knew for sure when it had been built. The estimate was 1910. Now 1910 is the tail end of the Queen Anne Victorian architectural style. And so for comparison, here's a picture of a house that we know for sure was a 1910 Queen Anne Victorian. And it's bigger than our house, but not dramatically different in terms of the style. So we thought that that wasn't a crazy estimate. And to give you a little bit of a better sense of what a Queen Anne Victorian style is like, it's known for having complex designs, steep roofs with irregularly shaped roofs. And it was also known for having asymmetric facades and a lot of decorative details, like the fish scales that you can see on the turret here, and what is known as spindle work on the porch railing. So those are some of the key elements that you'll see in any Queen Anne Victorian house. And this style was popular from the 1880s to the early 1900s. So we accepted the 1910 estimate at the time, but it always bothered us that we didn't know for sure. We really wanted to know. And we did know from the legal description of the property that someone named Amelia Vollers had owned the property in 1901 because she sold 15 feet of the back of it to the Southern Pacific Railroad. And that is where the Caltrain tracks are and where the Caltrain still still runs to this day. But we didn't know if in 1901 the house was there already, or if it was just the property and that the house was built later. So one of the first things we did to try to get a sense of what was going on was we went to the City of San Mateo Planning Department and we pulled all the records, all the previous permits issued for major repairs for the house. And that gave us some insight into who owned the house at various points from the 1950s onwards and what changes they had made. And one of the first items we found was from 1957. It was a report detailing an inspection by the city in conjunction with the health division. And they were concerned about rabbit hutches and chicken pens in the backyard. And they reported that those were dirty and needed to be removed. For us, we were interested in the diagram, a little hard to read here, that showed the gardens and the storage sheds and the garage. And that just gave us a sense of what it used to look like before the cottage and the two-car garage and cottage had been built. It also told us the name of one of the owners, Dolpha Lavezzo, and I just learned that the nephew of Dolpha Lavezzo is sitting right there, and that was very exciting to meet him before the talk. Anyway, so hopefully if I say something wrong, you can correct me at the end if you know. This document was the first one we found. The next one we found was a letter written in 1995 from an architect who was detailing the plans she had to repair the house. There was a new owner now, Marcia Doyle, and the architect estimated that the house had been built around 1895, but there was no other information about the history of the house. And so the repairs that were made, that were referenced in this document, were repairing the front porch and the stairs, and the rear porch and stairs and deck, and the rear porch and deck were not original to the house. The letter included a photo of the house, unfortunately not very easy to see, it was just a photocopy, but you get the sense it looks vaguely similar to the house that we bought. And then we were just excited to see the house, a picture of the house the way it looked before the developer bought it. So our next step was to go to the San Mateo County Recorder's Office to try to find out any house-related records that had been recorded by the county, like deeds of sale or something like that. So we spent an afternoon looking through microfilm records, and at that time we didn't have a lot of information to base our search on, so we had the name Amelia Vollers, we had the year 1901, we had the location of the property, lot 10, block 23. Of course we knew the name of the street it was on, it's on North Claremont, but we also knew that street names probably change over time, so we weren't counting on that being super helpful. We did discover from looking through those microfilm records that someone named Sophie Severin in 1943 had sold the house to Frank and Dolpha Lavezzo. But we didn't know if there was an interim buyer, and we still didn't know when the house was built. So to go back further in time, we came here to the archives of the San Mateo County Historical Association. And the person on duty, Carol Peterson, who I learned has retired, but she directed us to a 1964 survey of historic buildings that was done by the Junior League of San Francisco. And so this group, for whatever reason, decided to do a survey of historic buildings in downtown San Mateo, and they included our house, and they had a little document that they filled out to describe it. And they estimated that the house was built in the 1890s. And they said that the original owner was the foreman of the Howard estate, and that turns out not to be correct, but that is what they thought at the time. And they described the house as the only good house in the immediate area. So good for our house at the time. So we were also directed to a later survey that was, before we were directed there, this survey had some pictures in it that we were able to copy. And again, not all that different from when we bought it. It would be great if we could have seen the colors of the house. But it was kind of fun to see the 1960s Ford Mustang parked right out there in front, and to see that the apartment building that is still there had been built by 1964. And then the landscaping is obviously a little different, but basically that looks like our house. So the next historic resources inventory we were directed to was from 1989, and this one was done by the Historical Association. And they, at this time, the house was owned by the Doyles. And again, they estimated, the people who filled out this form estimated that the construction date was around 1895. But sadly, 25 years after the previous survey, they said that the house is in poor condition. Nevertheless, it is one of the more richly ornamented Queen Anne style houses left in San Mateo. It is an excellent example of the exuberant Victorian style known as Queen Anne. San Mateo has few houses such as this one which display the full range of confusion and visual excitement so often seen in the style. So I love that last sentence and how they encapsulate what the Queen Anne style is all about: confusion and yet visual excitement. So the person who filled out this survey estimated, did not know who the builder was. The claim that the builder was unknown. But more importantly for us and our research purposes, the third page of this survey had sources listed on it. And one of those sources was one that we hadn't heard of before, the Sanborn maps. And for those of you who don't know, Sanborn maps were created in the 18th and 19th centuries by fire insurance companies. And so people who are interested in the history of their cities or towns will often look at those maps to get a sense of what their neighborhoods or community looked like back in the day. So we were able to find a copy online from 1901, and we looked at the lot number and the block, and there was our house. Great, there it is, looks, the outline is the same. It's on C Street, which is what Claremont Street was called before it became Claremont. And there's obviously some sort of outbuilding in the back, but you can see the length of the lot's very large. And for us, that meant, okay, the house was definitely there by 1901, but we still don't know for sure when it was built. So the archivist suggested that we look at the microfilm copies of the San Mateo County property tax records to find the first year that someone paid property tax on the property, and then the next year that someone paid not just the property tax on the property, but on any improvements on the lot. And so if in year one there was no improvements on the lot, and year two there were, that would be a clue that that was most likely when a house had been built. So we went ahead and we started looking in the San Mateo County property tax records. This is not actually an image of those records. They're very hard to read. So I wanted to just give you a sense of what they kind of look like based on my memory. There's a lot of fancy handwriting that you would see from the 1800s, a little hard to read. But for us, the bigger issue was that San Mateo wasn't incorporated as a city until 1894. So if we're looking for records to find a particular house location, property location, that is that's in San Mateo now, but it wasn't considered San Mateo then, we didn't know exactly where to look because the records were organized by city or county or whatever. So we were struggling with that. We almost gave up, and thank God we didn't, because suddenly we figured out how these records were organized, and we quickly found what we were looking for. November 1890, someone named A.M. Vollers, who we know as Amelia, she had paid for the first time property tax on our property. There's the lot number, the block 23. It's in the neighborhood of the Western Addition, which is what it was called then. Now it's known as North Central. And so we looked for the year following that, and oh my gosh, there it is, $800 she has of improvements on the lot. and she's paid an additional property tax on that. And so we concluded that the house was built in 1891. Do you have a quick question, or you want to just wait?
Really quick, is that the actual record? Or is it...
No, that's a transcription, because the actual record is cursive, hard to read writing.
I see.
So we called the archivist over and we showed her what we found, and she confirmed our interpretation. She made this really nice table that you see here. She put it on the nice letterhead, and we took it over to the county records and presented it to them, and with the recorder's office, and we changed the date that the house was built in the official entry for our house. So exciting. So now we knew that Amelia Vollers was the owner originally of the house. We knew when it was built, and so we quickly found out a lot of additional information. So we've looked at building contract records, and this is what the records kind of look like. Here's that handwriting that's a little hard to read. So we have an entry in 1889, I think. No, 1890. We have an entry for Amelia Vollers entering into a building contract with J.S. Tannehill. So we looked up J.S. Tannehill. It turns out he was a builder based in Redwood City, and later he moved to Fresno, and he built the Kearny Mansion, which is shown right here, in 1903, and that is later listed on the National Register of Historic Places. We also found a booklet that was advertising the sale of the land in 1889. So Amelia didn't purchase it until 1890 officially. But this land was for sale in 1899. It was formerly part of William Howard's estate, and he was the son of a wealthy landowner who had purchased the property or the land in 1840s from the last governor of Alta California. So William Howard at some point decided to divide the land into lots and hold an auction on April 6, 1889. And here's just a transcription of that what's on the left-hand side of the screen. It's advertising this auction, describing the town of San Mateo and the neighborhood as having graded streets, piped water, beautiful suburban homes, schools, churches, and pointing out that San Mateo could be reached from San Francisco by a fast train, in 22 minutes, and explaining that the property was certainly double and quadruple at the present selling prices, so you better get in there fast. So in addition to offering this auction, they had a special train that went round trip from San Francisco to San Mateo that you could take to get to and from the auction. It cost 50 cents, which to me seemed like a lot of money at the time, so I looked it up, and that was actually about $17 in today's dollars, which I think is more than it costs now to go back and forth on Caltrain. So with that information, we were able to look through April and May 1889 records, and we found the bill of sale for Amelia Vollers' purchase of the lot. She paid $10 in gold coin on May 14, 1889. And as you may remember from the tax records, the lot was valued at $100 in 1890, 1 year later. So I'd say that the advertisement promising a doubling or quadrupling in value kind of underestimated what the true value would be. And the other interesting thing about this contract is that it describes Amelia Vollers as the wife of Hunker Vollers, and that was actually spelled wrong. There's no R on the end. And he was also known as Henry. But interesting that that's how she's described as somebody's wife. We also did some additional research. We knew that Amelia was living in the house in 1901 because she had sold the rear feet of the property to the Southern Pacific Railway, so we found that contract. And we learned that she sold it for $75, 7.5 times more than she paid for the entire lot, so she is doing very well with her investment. And this time in the contract, Amelia is not described as the wife of anyone, she's just Amelia, although her husband, we learned, was still alive at this time. So we did a little research on Amelia. Yes?
Quick question, where did you find these contracts? Are these in the microfiche here as well?
They're in the microfilm
Courthouse?
I believe, yes.
And this whole froze.
Okay, so, where was I? Research on her family, thank you. So, we learned that she was born in 1841 in Pennsylvania. We had thought she was born in Russia, but I just learned no, it's Pennsylvania. She was born to German immigrants. And she married Henry Vollers, who was also a German immigrant. And at some point, they are in San Francisco, so I don't know where they met, but they show up and they're in San Francisco, and here they are in the 1860 census, and he is 26 and Amelia is 19. They have just been married, and I think they were living with Henry's brother. Henry's listed as a grocer, and for whatever reason on the 1860 census, they ask people about if they own any real estate, and Henry says no. They ask about your personal net worth. He says $5,000, which is a lot of money, and that was super interesting. He's listed as a grocer. That is his occupation. And in 1868, we found an entry in the San Francisco directory that showed this grocery, in all likelihood, Vollers and Hildebrand. It's a grocery and liquor store, so that may be explaining why he has so much money at that time. But by the 1870 census, he is listed as a porter, and later he shows up as a cooper, which is someone who repairs or creates barrels. So I don't think he hung on to that money. And we also don't think he was ever a foreman of the Howard estate, because by the 1900 census, when they're living in the house, he's listed as a laborer. And so at this time, they've been living in the house for 9 years, and they're living there with one of their 3 children, Catherine, and she is 29 years old, and she's listed as a dressmaker. So here's a photo of Catherine in her 1924 passport application. She's in her early 50s. This was the only photo I was able to find of the entire family, which made me sad. I really wanted to know what Amelia looked like, but if she looked like Catherine, then maybe there's hope that that's kind of what Amelia looked like. In 1903, Henry died after being struck by an electric streetcar in Burlingame, and according to the obituary that was published in the San Francisco paper, the funeral was held at the house, and so that was interesting. And then 3 years later, Amelia died at age 65, and she and one of her children and Henry are all buried in a cemetery in Oakland. So it's possible that her children sold the house when she died, or maybe they sold it later, and maybe Sophie Severin was also the next owner, but we never found that sort of chain of possession. We didn't have time to search for it, and we never went back. But at least we knew when it was built, who the original owner was, and part of the reason that we wanted to know that was because we wanted to be able to restore the house to its close to original condition. And so we wanted to know when it was built so we could kind of guess when that might be. And so in some cases, it was obvious from looking at the house, like certain things were missing. So for example, if you look at the porch railing here on the left-hand side, you can see that there are these flower petals, and on the right-hand side, those flower petals are missing. So that would be something that we wanted to restore, repair, so it looked like it used to look. In other cases, a lot of the exterior work on the house, exterior decorations on the house were in really good shape, and they looked to be original to us, and they didn't look like they needed to be repaired at all. And so here's an example of some of the decorative woodwork around one of the front windows. And the same was true of this 25-pane dormer window. It looked to us to be original. It maybe needed some painting, but otherwise it was in good shape, and was most likely there when the house was built. We were pretty confident that the windows in the front of the house were the original windows. They were single-pane wooden windows with these lovely little tiles or panes in the corner that were different colors, and so when the sun comes in, it looks really pretty. We didn't think this lighting fixture was original. It looked pretty modern. But the ceiling medallion above the lighting fixture we assumed was original. It matched the ceiling medallion in the dining room. And we weren't sure about this lighting fixture. It to us looked like a kerosene lamp that perhaps was transformed to run on electricity at some point, but we never knew that for sure. That was just a guess. Many of the doors appear to be original, especially at the front of the house. You can see here some of these closet doors and the built-in cupboard on the right. They have all a very distinctive style, and the molding around them has those distinctive bullseyes, which were very Queen Anne style. There were also a pair of pocket doors that separated the living room and the dining room that appeared to be original to us. And we learned that these doors, along with other design elements in the house, were including like the handles that you use to open the pocket doors and the face plates for the doorknobs. These are all elements of Eastlake style, which was popular started in 1868, and the person who the style was named after was someone named Charles Eastlake. He was very fond of geometric and nature-inspired designs. So you can see that here in this mortise block at the very top. There's a flower petals, and there's your nature, and then the swans. There's some swans right underneath it. And those kind of elements reappear in a lot of the hardware. And Charles Eastlake wrote a book, Hints on Household Taste in Furniture, Upholstery, and Other Details. That was published in 1868, and that's, as I said, that's where this style got its name. It was very influential. We thought the fireplace was likely original, had a wooden mantle. We weren't sure about all of the tiles. So the tiles, many of them seemed to be original, but we thought that these two in the corners, the sunflower, they were in very good shape, and we thought there's no way those are from the 1890s. They look like they're from the 1970s. And so but we were like, well, who knows? We don't know. So we did a little research, and we did find that tiles like these were available in the 1890s from this company called the American Encaustic Tiling Company, and that was based out of Zanesville, Ohio. It was founded in 1875. And you can see on the left-hand side there, those tiles, this was from a catalog at the time. They kind of matched most of the tiles around our fireplace. And then the other tiles I'm showing you here are not sunflower tiles, obviously, but they are green, and they're sort of different and potentially similar to our sunflower tiles there. So we, at the time, thought, okay, I guess those sunflower tiles are original. And then when I was doing a little more checking research for this presentation, I actually found an auction of these American encaustic tiles that was listed on eBay for these sunflower tiles. So I think that we were correct that those sunflower tiles were original. Once we had a sense of what was original to the house and what was missing and what needed to be repaired, we undertook our first repair and restoration project, which was focused on repairing the original doors and replacing those that had been removed. So the back of the house I mentioned was less historic. It had been remodeled multiple times. And the doors to the back of the house were all modern, plain front doors. They did not look like the Eastlake style you can see there on the left. And we were especially eager to change the door to the back porch to match the style of the front door. Here's the front door for comparison. And you can see the back door that we found at a salvage yard is a little fancier, but it's basically the same style. So we went to salvage yards in the East Bay and found some doors that we could use, and we had to hire someone to make them fit. So we hired Glenn at Raven Restoration, and he did that work for us. And here's just an image of some of the work being done on the doors to get them to be the right size. also repaired the wooden windows at the front of the house. Most of those did not open, and he replaced the damaged sash locks. So I just want to go back to the windows for a second. You can see that they have a rope there that allows the doors to, the windows to raise and lower. And when Glenn took out the old rope, it was the original rope from 1890. It was really gross. It was brown and disgusting, but it was kind of fun. We should have, did we keep it?
We kept it.
We kept it, okay. We did, I should have brought it, we didn't bring it. Anyway, so he fixed all that so they would open and close, and then we bought reproduction East Lake sash locks to put on so that we could lock our windows for the first time. And you can see from here the floral elements that were the hallmark of that style. Let's see, and so we also wanted to kind of repair or restore a lot of the door hardware. You saw a little bit of that already. So this is, these were the bin pulls or the door handles for the drawer handles for the built-in cupboard that had been removed at some point and were just sitting inside one of the drawers. They weren't in bad shape, but they were a little bit rusty. The door hinges, a lot of them were in okay shape. Again, just a little bit rusty. Here's that East Lake style. And here are some of the face plates, again, looking not terrible, but kind of rusty. Here's a strike plate for one of the doorknobs. And some of the hinges were in really bad shape. I think they had been removed when the developer went to paint the interior of the house, and they got damaged in removing them, and they never got put back on. So these we found in a bucket in the attic. So let's hear it for buckets and attics. And then anything that we didn't have enough of, we were able to find at salvage yards and purchase those. So we worked with a company in Redwood City that did a lot of the replating for us. So here's what a lot of it, this isn't all of it, but a bunch of it, this is what it looked like before we took it to them to have it made bright and shiny. And here's what it looked like afterwards. You can see, wow, you can really see all that East Lake design now. It's looking beautiful, bright, shiny, and new. And here's another one that shows you all of the door hinges and what they looked like. And then we also had some work done on the door knobs. The porcelain, the black is porcelain, so that was just stayed the same, but the collars were, we had copper plated. So our hope was that this is kind of what everything looked like in 1891 when Amelia first moved in. We also, we had the drawer pulls for that built-in cover. We had made shined up so that you could really see the silver bright. All right, we also worked on replacing the modern light fixture. So we looked at antique stores basically and found two lighting fixtures. This one is in the hallway, and I'll show you the other one, which is in the dining room, that were gasoliers that had been modified to run on electricity. And so there's the the hallway, and here's the one that we had put in the dining room. And you can see that here's a picture where you can see the whole room. You can see the lighting fixture, obviously, and then if you look in the back on the left, you can see the built-in cupboard now has its drawer pulls and its little lock. And then we also replaced the lighting fixture in the living room. This was a reproduction of a lighting fixture that was supposed to be both gas and electric. When the electricity wasn't working, because when electricity first came in San Mateo, it was kind of in 1895, I think it was pretty unreliable. So we also replaced the roof, and in the process we uncovered the original wooden roof shingles. There they were with the handmade nails that were used to attach it to the house. And later owners, at least one, maybe two, had put a roof over the top of the original shingles and and put composition shingles on the top. But the city asked us to take it all down to the studs, so all of that original wooden shingling went away. And then a final step was painting. We sanded it down to the original redwood, which you can sort of see here. And we looked at the traces of the layers of paint, and we had this idea, possibly the original color was a pale green, not sure about that. But we had already chosen our more vibrant green, so we were kind of happy that we were at least, you know, in the ballpark of the green family. And so we had it painted, and we chose to have it painted in this way that you could really see the design more clearly. So the developer had painted like those sunburst designs at the front of the house, just one color, all off-white. But we had it painted with alternating colors so it really stood out more. And the same was true for the front porch, and you can't really see it in this picture, but the spindle work at the top of the porch there has little green bits in it as well. So we thought it looked a little more dramatic and appealing to us. But even before we completed this repair work, we had decided to submit an application to the National Register of Historic Places to put the house on that register. And so one of the first things we had to do was decide on a name for the property. And we obviously chose the Amelia Vollers house, but we chose it because she was the original owner, and we also thought it was interesting and kind of cool that back in 1890, she was on the purchase contract. The house was purchased in her name rather than her husband's. So the house qualified under criteria C, and that is the property embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction. And here's just a small excerpt from the summary we wrote to explain why we chose that style. The Amelia Vollers house embodies the distinctive characteristics of the Queen Anne style. It is one of a very small number of Queen Anne homes remaining in San Mateo, and is an excellent example of the Queen Anne spindlework style. The period of significance is 1891, the year the house was constructed. So yay, we are able to say for sure when the house was built. That was very helpful. And we chose to write the application ourselves. Some people hire architectural historians to do it, but we thought we'd already done all this research, and so we should get the credit for it. So we checked out a lot of books from the library on the Queen Anne architectural style, so we would know how to describe it and all the funky words that they used, like lark's tongue groove and, you know, chamfered corners and stuff like that. And then we also used Mitch Postel's book about the history of early San Mateo to give a little bit of background. So all of that we put into the application. And I won't go into any more detail about the application. If you want to see it, or you want to see a lot of these documents, they're all on this website that my spouse created, vollershouse.org. So you can look there. There is an early draft of the application on there. So one advantage we had to writing the application ourselves is that the reviewers were a little more forgiving because we weren't professionals, and so we were given a chance to revise it. They gave us notes before it was sent off to Washington, D.C., and then in February of 2015, our application was approved, and we were now officially on the National Register. And once you get your property or your house put on, you can put up a plaque. They don't give you a plaque, and you're not required to, but we thought it'd be nice to have a plaque to show off on our house. So we worked with an artist and created this plaque that we thought matched the style of the house, and we put it up on the front porch next to the door. And people actually did come and look at it and comment on it, so it was a good advertisement for the house. We sold the house in 2020, and we don't know if the new owners plan any additional work. As I said at the beginning, though, the house was in pretty good shape when we bought it, and we left it in better shape, so I think it will stay in good condition for quite a while. Thank you.
Questions?
Life intervened, a lot of bad things happened, so we had to leave.
Up in the front here.
Question on the reservation. You said initially the house was not allowed to be torn down by the developer
Yeah,
because it was historic to San Mateo City.
yeah.
What, in your understanding, what's the difference if you registered now on the National Register, apart from being, in terms of the protection of the house? In what extent is that now exceeding the protection of the house?
I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it has any additional protections. There were already, because San Mateo recognized it as a historic home, there were already restrictions in place, but the restrictions are not super onerous, and they were, for us, things we were required to do that we would have done already. They really want you to maintain the exterior of the house the way it was, and we tried to put on a solar tile roof, for example, and they wouldn't let us. But other than that, it was not onerous to try to meet their standards at all.
Did you find it more difficult to sell the house because it was on the National Register? And that comes with some obligations for a new owner.
It's hard to tell why people are or are not interested in your house. No one was interested in the house that put a bid on it because of its historic nature. We did enter into a property tax sort of program called the Mills Act early on, and that gives you a discount on your property taxes, and they expect you to use that money to restore the house. And so that could be appealing to people who want to buy the house. They can still take advantage of that because it saves you on your property taxes. But like I said, most of the restrictions on what you can do to the house under the city's rules or the National Register's rules are not super onerous. So I doubt that anyone would not buy the house because of those rules. They might not want to buy it because they thought it would be harder to maintain in general and would require more specialized knowledge to repair.
How long did it take to actually sell?
Like 6 weeks. So at the time, that was a long time though. Other houses at the time were selling in more like 2 weeks. So I think the bigger problem for us was there was the cow train tracks in the backyard, and there was an apartment building right next door. So
Right.
people weren't excited about that.
I assume you saw, thank you for working so hard and doing such wonderfully historically detailed work on it. I worked for City Sanitary Planning, and we saved the old Victorian neighborhood, and that took a lot just to do the overlay of each of those individual lots, not a district.
Yeah.
I see in yesterday's paper, Daily Journal, that Walter Schwartz, who owns a significant house on Elm Street, on the corner, I think it used to be a bed and breakfast perhaps, I don't know, wants to get a Mills Act designation,
Okay.
and it definitely qualifies, it's in great shape, etc. But this article seems to indicate that they have been flummoxed. It's gonna take so much work or whatever, and they have to make a deposit, blah, 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 blah. And of course, City of San Mateo hasn't got an easy, streamlined process for historic inventory, identifying specific properties, and then facilitating Mills Act. How did you get a Mills Act when they didn't have that process?
Well, they did have a process. We got the Mills Act like a year after we bought it, right? Or a year or two, Brian? Is that right?
I don't remember.
Okay, we'll just say a year or two. There were very few properties in San Mateo at the time that had a Mills Act with the city. They were eager to have more, and so they do require you to give them a bunch of money up front. And when you've just put a lot of money into buying a house, it's a little alarming and scary. And then you have to write the contract, and you have to negotiate out this and that. And there was a point where we pulled out because we felt like the requirements were too strict and too uncertain for the future. But the head of the planning department at that time, once he realized we were pulling out, he said, "I want to make this happen. Let's meet, we'll talk about your concerns." And he crossed out the parts of the contract we didn't like. And so then we signed it and we moved forward.
What year was that?
So we bought it in 2010, so it was probably 2012 or so. I think so, back here.
Why did the contractor before you fix the foundation? Did he see something?
I don't know, but Ron maybe knows. Ron Lovezzo lived in the house for a little while. Go ahead.
Yeah, the foundation was after it got sold by my family.
Yeah.
And I don't know who bought it after us before you guys bought it.
The Doyles bought
The
it,
Doyles,
and
so-
then the developer and then us.
Yeah. The apartment building next door was relatively new compared with everything else in that area.
Yeah.
And there used to be a school across the street called Turnbull, which
Right.
is now the California Water Department.
Yeah.
And that, I think they were worried, when they sold it, the people that bought it were worried about the foundation. But I can tell you, we had 3 water beds in that house. And
Oh
that
my
floor
God.
never moved. when we were living there.
Yeah.
And it survived in 1906.
It did. It survived in 1906, that old growth redwood.
Question here in the back.
Hi, so how hard is it for an individual to find out the history of any property if they aren't the owner? I mean, or is it like you have to be the owner? Do you have like a cheat sheet of like, here's step 1, here's 2, here's...
Oh gosh, no. I don't think you have to be the owner. I think all you need to know is a little bit, like the only thing we had to go on to begin with was the address of our house and that legal description of the property when we bought it. But that legal description of the property was probably public knowledge. And that had Amelia Vollers' name on it. And so we didn't know exactly what we were doing, so we just got lucky and as I outlined, those were all the steps that we took. So if you wanted to find out about the history of your house, you could, well, it sounds like maybe you don't own the house, but a house, you could follow the same steps to go to the planning department and request documents. I don't think you have to be the owner. I think that's public knowledge, so you could start there. And then obviously going over to the county recorder's office, the microfilm part, you don't have to ask anybody, you just go and grab a microfilm and start looking through it.
Are you going to do this again?
What do you mean, this presentation or buy a house?
And redo all the things?
I don't think so. Sadly, owning this house, we loved the house and we were happy to have restored it and done it in a way that we thought Amelia would be happy with. But it's kind of draining, and the biggest problem for us wasn't that we had to, we didn't do the work ourselves. We had to figure out what we wanted done. But we had to hire people to do it, and that's difficult. And then, so finding the right people is hard, and then just repairing the plumbing or something, which I didn't even talk about, which wasn't a huge deal, but as a homeowner, I'm sure everyone else who's a homeowner knows this, if you don't know someone already, you have to find people to come fix your house. And you have to do all your due diligence and get three people to come and give you 3 different estimates, and then you pick the one that you like, and it's just a lot. And if you're trying to work, if you're retired, that would be a different story, but if you're trying to work, if you have a family, and if you're an introvert and you don't like talking on the phone with people you don't know, it's a lot. So we're kind of in the mode of not wanting to own a house, at least for the near future. But I was, like I said, happy to have worked on this house and lived in it. It was a beautiful house.
Patricia, I noticed that one of the previous owners was named Severin.
Sophie Severin, yeah, do you
That was a
know?
popular dairy back in the 19 teens,
Right,
San Mateo County.
yeah, we knew that, although I think it's spelled differently. But yeah, there's a mural in Burlingame that advertises that, but I don't think it's the same family, but maybe.
Question on the, you said Hills Act? Was it-
Mills, M-I-L-L-S,
Okay.
yep.
That's being done then with the owner, contractually, right? So if
Yes.
you pass on the house, if you sell the house, the new owner wouldn't have this contract, they would have to negotiate basically with the city again, correct?
Incorrect.
Oh,
Incorrect.
no, yeah,
It's with the house for
What's
10
the
years.
house?
yeah, it's with the house for 10 years, so.
It's a state law.
If you wanna withdraw from it, like say in year 5, you think, I am sick of this, I don't want it anymore, I wanna withdraw, you can't, you tell them, we're withdrawing, but it doesn't officially end till the 10 years is up. If they
But
become aware of that.
it's part of the sale then, the new owner.
Yes,
would have
it's
to
part of it.
agree to.
Well, they don't have to agree to it, they have to keep it until the 10 years are up.
Right, no, no.
And then they could renegotiate if they want to.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for sharing with us today.